Hello and good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm sorry to disappoint. Nick Cage isn't actually on today's live cast, but I did watch a Nick Cage movie the other day that I was going to mention, hence the Nick Cage mention in the title of this video. I hope you're doing well. It's Wednesday, December 11th, 2024, and yeah, I'm happy to be here with you today. What is going on today? So I guess I'll cover the topics on the subject line just so you aren't curious for too long. So the Nick Cage thing is that we watched a movie called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent this past weekend, and I really enjoyed it. Like it was one of those movies where where an actor, in this case Nicolas Cage, plays a version of himself in a movie that is otherwise fictional. It ends up being a lot of things. It's a family drama, it's an action movie, it's a buddy comedy. It's a lot of different things, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think I've watched a Nick Cage movie in quite some time. But the movie referenced a lot of his movies that I have seen, movies from what I consider back in the day, like Face Off and The Rock and Con Air, which I don't actually think I've seen. But anyway, it's a really good movie. It got me thinking about movies that have movie stars playing a slightly different version of themselves and how that can be pretty amusing. Yeah. And Julio mentioned that Pedro Pascal is in it too. Pedro Pascal is a delight. He's awesome. So he's in it, and he plays a really fun character in the movie as well. So that was the Nick Cage mention. The Whisk reference in the line is there's a local bakery called Whisk that I primarily visit when I go to the farmers market, the Tower Grove Farmers Market. But in the holiday, in the holiday season, they do a holiday pop-up at their location where they bake everything. And it is just a charming delight to walk into the store in the holidays because they do a wonderful job of decorating it and making it look really, really beautiful for the holidays. So if you're in St. Louis, I highly recommend going to the Whisk Bakery. And we had a fun Saturday where we paired the bakery with a play test of a product that I'm working on that kind of came to me a few weeks ago. It's something that I didn't expect to think about or to work on, but it's actually pretty cool. Like I'm enjoying where it is right now. I don't want to spoil what type of product it is yet because it may not ever exist, but we had a good playtest of it, and I'm now putting it into blind playtesting as well. Oh, Chad reminds me that Nick Cage was Spider-Man Noir. So I actually have seen a Nick Cage movie in the last few years because he was in Into the Spider-Verse. Mark is watching Livecast live. And actually, Mark, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to throw out, I had many questions for you all today. And then I'll get to the last topic in the subject line. But one of the questions I had for you today is that Christmas this year falls on a Wednesday. And so most likely there will be some conflicts on that day for doing a live cast. Not even necessarily for my schedule. It'll probably be a more relaxing day, but I might do some work on that day. I'll probably also hang out with some family and eat some good food. But I'm guessing that many people will be less available than normal on the 25th, especially in the morning around this time. I know this isn't morning worldwide, but for the US at least, it is morning. So I wanted to throw out to you, is there a day for anyone watching this, especially if you're not watching this live? So this might be a question for Mark, but for those of you who are generally available at this time, it might not be as much of a question for you, but those of you who are watching this in the future and you aren't able to usually watch this live, is there another day and time, and let's use Central Time, St. Louis time for my point of reference at least, is there another day and time the week of Christmas that you would like me to do a live cast instead of the morning of the 25th? I would be happy to consider a different day and time for that particular week, just to reach some people that aren't usually able to attend live. Anyone can answer that question, but I'm particularly asking people who aren't able to normally attend live. Yeah, that's my question today. All right, first of many questions today. The last little topic that I had on the chart was that last week I asked, and I'll pull this up on the other screen as I go through it just briefly. Last week was our newsletter, and I put our demographic survey out there. This year, so far, actually, over 4,000 people have responded to the demographic survey, which is really, really helpful. And I summarized some of the most interesting results on Monday's blog post. And I thought I'd share them really briefly here, just in case you're interested. Let's see if I can pull them up here. Here we go. So I'll pull that up. So the first thing was the question, at what phase of the gaming hobby would you say you're in? And a lot of people said that they are selectively adding and subtracting. And then a lot of other people said that they are refining and enhancing. So that stood out to me a little bit about that data point. I'm just going to skim through here really quick. If you have anything that you want me to highlight or talk about, I'm happy to talk about them. The other question I highlighted was, which of these is the best combination of convenience and helpfulness when deciding if you want to buy a tabletop game? And the answers were kind of split. The major answers were split between watching, reading, or listening to a review, or watching a playthrough video or a few turns of the game. I thought that was interesting. Down here, I asked, which of the following best describes who you are as a gamer? And 41% of people said that they are a multiplayer gamer with friends. And then there were some other big categories. 16% of people said they're primarily a two-player gamer. 15% said that they are a heavy gamer, and around 11% said solo gamer. This question, I asked a bunch of different categories that some of them are overlapping even within the idea of how do you primarily play games. And so I might expand this in the future to let people respond to it a few times, like 2 or 3 different answers. I also asked about sleeving. How often do you sleeve cards in your games? And around 23% of people said that they almost always sleeve cards. And then everyone else varying degrees of how often they sleeve cards. And then the last question I highlighted on the post is, how long do you prefer to wait between paying for a newly announced game and receiving it? And this was actually one of the biggest differences between last year's survey and this year. Exact same question, exact same wording, exact same answers. Yet last year, around 33% of people said that they preferred to wait 1 week or less. They wanted to pay for a game and receive it almost right away. But that shifted down from 33 down to 13%. And most of those people seem to shift over to the category of 6 months or less, which says to me that people have a lot of games on their shelf right now that they haven't played. And while they want to look forward to getting new games in the future, they don't need more games right now. They don't need them right now. That was my takeaway, but there could be other reasons for that. Let me know your insights if you answered that, if you switch from one to the other. Julio said, I see your, I guess I won't read them all out loud, but I do see your answers, and I will read the answers in the future about what day and time you think I should maybe do a live cast on the week of Christmas. Here's a question from Steven. If you could add a Christmas or winter holiday expansion to a Stonemaier game, what game would you choose? I wouldn't choose a religious holiday to associate with one of our games for sure, because there are a lot of holidays. I want to respect different traditions, but a kind of a winter holiday expansion, just winter holidays in general, let's say, Stephen, what game would I choose to apply that to? What game would that work for? Maybe Scythe. Scythe, I really like the snowy cards inside, then it would be, I think, fairly easy to add a little bit of a Christmas theme to them, or a holiday theme to them. Yeah. Yeah, Derek says something about the survey. He didn't quite know the difference between refining and selectively adding and removing. So the last year I actually only had refining. For me, the difference is refining and enhancing is where you are pretty happy with the games that you have in your collection, and you are mostly just adding expansions to those games, adding accessories to those games. Yes, you might still buy some games, maybe in that series of games, and some new games from time to time, but mostly you are refining the games you already have. Whereas selectively adding and removing is that you're still actively looking for games that hit the right sweet spot for you. But when you do, you're generally adding a game and then getting rid of a game. That was the difference that I used for it, that I thought of for it. Chad also had the same question there. Daria says, how did you feel during the final hours of your viticulture campaign? Daria is entering the last 24 hours of their campaign and feeling pretty stressed. Daria, I relate to that stress. I feel for you, and congrats on getting to the last 24 hours. That's amazing. I was sleep deprived. I was stressed. This was back in 2012 for the viticulture campaign. and I was just kind of on, like I was trying to respond to comments and messages right away and just be super in tune with what my backers needed or wanted, or what questions they had, potential backers and current backers. Yeah, I think it's been a while, but that I recall feeling that way at the end of the campaign, and grateful. Really, there was a lot of gratitude that strangers from around the world who literally had no idea who I was or what I would create for them, other than what I had shown them on the project page, were supporting this project. That meant a lot to me, and that I was trying to create something awesome for them. So a lot of gratitude during that time. Moody Magic Maple says, in terms of market segmentation, what's the process that Stonemaier Games takes when deciding what segments they'd like a game to fall into? That's an interesting question. So part of it is the big picture of, and I think you're kind of referring to this, is that we're not trying to make games for everyone. We're trying to bring joy to tabletops worldwide. So we're not trying to actively exclude anyone in any way. In fact, we're trying to welcome anyone who is interested in the types of games that we make, for sure. But part of it is, a big part of it is having some sort of focus on what we want people to think of when they think of Stonemaier Games. And this is something that we have thought of and talked about for many years, and really kind of solidified it fairly early on, which is that we want to make event games like the main feature of a game night that can play from at least 1 to 5 players, maybe even up to 6 players, maybe even beyond, in a reasonable amount of time, ideally 1 to 2 hours. And that is, all those things are somewhat arbitrary, but part of it is that those are the games that we gravitate to. Those are the games that I really enjoy being a part of as a designer and as a developer. And it just has, we decided that was our identity, and so it has become our identity. Along the way, there are segments that we decide to continue to focus on. Like originally, we didn't have that solo game element of it, and then I discovered how many people really love to play games solo, and so I didn't want to exclude those people. Same with like colorblind friendliness. Like those are segments that we aren't targeting, but we're trying to actively include, things like that. Landon says, what's your favorite Russian/Ultimate Railroad expansion? I'm currently enamored with the industry track from the Asian expansion. It's so dramatically different from the other ones. It's been a little while since I played it. I did get really into playing it on Board Game Arena during the pandemic. But I don't know if I've ever really gotten into the expansions. I'm pretty sure I've played the American expansion, if that is a thing. But I primarily just played the core game for Russian or Ultimate Railroads. If anyone else has a favorite expansion, feel free to mention it in the comments, though. Garrett says the Festivus expansion for Sci. I would actually love to. I love Festivus. It's a Seinfeld reference that I hosted a Festivus party for years, just because I thought it was a fun thing to do, and it was a lot of fun. But doing Garrett says, Scythe, the airing of grievances. I think that would be a lot of fun. And Nicole mentioned, let's get going on transparent card overlays so all those dragons in Wormspan can have holiday hats, boots, scarves, and milk and cookies. I like that too. Actually, the milk and cookies goes really well with the dragons in particular. Jeff says, have you made it to the new miniature market location that just opened in St. Louis? I haven't yet, but I am excited to check it out. Miniature Market, many of you who aren't in St. Louis probably know it as a big online store, and it is. And it also happens to be our warehouse and fulfillment center in St. Louis. But they also once had a big, beautiful store in St. Louis, and they ended up moving to a new location that recently opened up. Jeff says, it's going to be nicer for me to not have to drive out to the opposite end of the metropolitan area. That's great. Yeah, no, I haven't been there yet, Jeff, but I need to check it out. Question is, I tend to host playtest on Tabletop Simulator. Do you think I should drift away from this method? I've been pretty vocal in that I do not support Tabletop Simulator for a variety of reasons. Among them, rampant copyright violations that they really don't seem to care about. They don't pay their bills on time. But mainly the IP, the copyright is a major issue for me on Tabletop Simulator. And so we use Tabletopia, which I think is very similar. Doesn't necessarily have all the bells and whistles of Tabletop Simulator, but yeah, if you care about those things like copyright protection and intellectual property, I would recommend trying out Tabletopia instead of Tabletop Simulator. But I also recommend playtesting on the actual tabletop. I think that mirrors the actual experience of playing a game on the tabletop much more closely than playing digitally. It's okay to do some digital playtests, but don't forget the actual tabletop too. Jeff says, did you have any feats of strength at the Festivus party? We did. So the Festivus party that I hosted was mostly back in my 20s. And so it was a little bit more drinking focused. And the feat of strength was, for a couple of years, it was beer pong. And then I invented a new version of beer pong that I thought included more people on an ongoing basis. That was essentially a combination of the game Foursquare, the kind of childhood parking lot game Foursquare, combined with beer pong. It let people rotate in and out a lot more. Or if you're really good at it, you would kind of solidify your spot in it. So that was the feat of strength for several years at my Festivus party. Oh, Garrett says there might be an issue with my mic. Sometimes I sound like I'm underwater briefly. Yeah, thanks for the heads up about that. Maybe I'll have to check my plugs to make sure everything's plugged in. It's the same mic that I've been using for a long time. But Garrett, yeah, I appreciate the heads up about that. Sorry about that. Maybe it's time to replace the mic. Yeah. Let me know if anyone else experiences that as well. I'm happy to update my equipment if I need to, or check the current equipment I have, which seems, I don't think anything has changed about it. Yeah, actually, this is a good point for one of the reasons to actually test the game on the tabletop. I think there are a couple of reasons. Zochdal says, with some recent releases, I feel like there was not a lot of tabletop testing, hence the games being big table hogs. There are other reasons that a game can end up being a table hog. But I think that's a good point, that you don't think of the amount of space that you need when you are playtesting digitally. One of the other ones is setup and cleanup. You don't think about that when you're playtesting digitally because the digital interface does it for you. And also maintenance and upkeep. Sometimes some of these games do some of these upkeep elements for you, where actually on the tabletop you have to do those yourself, like shuffling cards. That can be instant on Tabletopia, but in real life, if you are constantly having to shuffle a dozen different decks of cards, you notice it for sure. Melissa says minor audio issues as well. Yeah, let me know if they persist. Maybe I'll give it another week or so, and if they continue to persist, I'll get a new mic if I need to. Steven says, how often do you play Stonemaier Games solo? Which ones? Most of my solo playtesting, or solo gaming of Stonemaier Games comes in playtesting. And I'm not playtesting Automa. I'm kind of playtesting the multiplayer version of the game by myself. It's very rare that I play any game solo. I love that our games have solo, but it isn't something that I pursue for my free time. Greg says, it's okay to be this guy, Greg. He says, I'm waiting forever for the Ironclad Gears of Corruption restock. And I appreciate your patience. It isn't for lack of anything, really. We as soon as we had demand for it, we started production. But one thing that slowed it down a little bit is that we really, really wanted to make sure that the mechs didn't come apart at the base. Some of the Ironclad mechs in the first printing of Gears of Production came apart at the base. It's just glue, but it's annoying. Like, you spent a lot of money on it. You don't want it to come detached. So anyway, Greg, it took production a little bit longer than normal. Currently, they are on the boat and they're due to arrive in mid-January. This is also updated in the Scythe and Expeditions, or the Expeditions page of our website. If you check out Gears of Corruption, it should be on there at least. Yeah. So mid-January. I'm sorry it's taken so long. Moody Magic Maple says, my assumption would be to create a game in multiplayer first, then create a solo element. Somewhat, yes. I mean, in general, yeah. That's how I operated some of our games. I design or develop the multiplayer version of the game, and then I hand it off to Automa Factory, which specializes in making solo modes, and they use that foundation of the multiplayer to make the solo mode. I answered a little bit hesitantly there because it does not have to be you to create the solo mode. It's a very different skill set to design a solo game than a multiplayer game. Aaron says, are there plans for a digital version of Wormspan like there is for Wingspan through Monster Couch? There are tentative plans for a digital Wormspan, but nothing has been announced officially yet, so I don't want to say anything officially yet, but it is something that I hope will happen, and I believe is somewhat in progress of happening. But full digital versions of games like Wingspan for Monster Couch take a long, long time to implement, And even Board Game Arena versions take the BGA developers a long time to implement as well. Interesting. So yeah, you all just said that you're getting the muffled mic effect, and I don't exactly know why. I don't think it's an internet issue. I'm definitely not changing anything about the mic here. So yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry that that's happening, and I'll take a very close look after the live cast. I'll definitely check the plugs first and see if it continues. What else is going on today? So a lot of stuff happened over the weekend. We played disc golf as usual, and I didn't get an ace this time, even though I've had a couple aces recently. But another friend, Steven, got an ace, and it was one of the craziest aces that I've seen because we didn't see it. And we heard it, but we didn't know it was his disc. He threw the disc. We could not see the basket, and we could tell that it was a pretty good drive. But and we heard some chains hit, but we thought they came from a different part of the course. And then we got it to the basket, and Steven's disc was in the basket. It was pretty incredible. I love seeing friends get aces, and that was awesome to witness, especially with that odd delay where we didn't know. We really had no idea that it went in. Also, my friend Miles, his daughter turned 11 recently, and she asked for her birthday to attend our game night. She, of course, is always welcome at game night, but this was a special occasion for Miles to bring her, and their whole family came to game night. And we played caution signs with her and had a blast with caution signs, and also played. So that was a very new game, and we also played a very old game, Scotland Yard, with her acting as in the Mr. X role or Mrs. X role, and we had fun doing that as well at game night. I think those are the only games that I played in the last few days. Also, some big news. Vantage is now in pre-production. So that means that we have sent the final files to Panda, and Panda is reviewing those files to make sure they are printable. And just before I went on this live cast, I actually got the email from Panda saying, it's time for you to go review the digital versions of the files. And the difference there is, like, we sent all the cards to Panda, for example. And they're just like one very long file. Panda takes those cards and they put them on card sheets, and we have to review those card sheets to make sure that the sheets are printed correctly, like the back aligned to the front, all that stuff. And Vantage has so many cards. This is the most number of files that I have ever had to review for a game. I was trying to download them before this live cast, and I couldn't even get through the number of downloads because there were so many individual card sheets that we are making. I'm counting. How many are there total? There's like 20 card sheets that I will review later this afternoon to make sure that everything is correct. So yeah, a lot of cards in Vantage. Pam says, thanks, Pam. So excited for Vantage. Another game designer that I'm a big fan of. That means a lot coming from you, Pam. Let's see. Tony says, am I watching Skeleton Crew on Disney Plus? Not yet. I will be watching it for sure, but I'm waiting for a few episodes to accumulate before I start watching. Let's see. Here's Miles, whose daughter was over here for her birthday. He says, Leona had a blast feeling sneaky. Yeah, you get to be sneaky in Scotland Yard if you are playing the Mr. and Mrs. X role. Ray says, have you checked out the new Dune show on Max? We haven't watched it yet. Ray. We do love the world of Dune. Maybe I was a little influenced by a review that I read that said that it was a little bit boring. But that was one review. I shouldn't let one review influence whether or not we watch the show. So I think we will watch it. I think Megan is a little bit more excited about Silo, and so we're probably going to watch that one first. And yeah, so we'll probably start with that, and then we definitely have it on the list, though. In fact, I don't actually know if it's on my list, but I need to put it on the list to make sure we don't forget about that. That's the Dune show on Max right now. I'm also reading the new Brandon Sanderson book, the book 5 of the Stormlight Archives. Just started it. I'll probably be reading it for a couple months. It's a massive book, but so far I'm really enjoying it. It's always, when I read Sanderson's writing, it's so good, or at least it resonates with me so well. Like sometimes I struggle with certain writing styles to just get into the flow of the writing, but his writing it's not simple, but it's also not overly complex. It just hits this really sweet spot for me that makes it easy to read and easy to keep on reading. We also went to see Moana 2 in the theater. recently last week. I don't think it holds up to Moana 1. Moana 1 is a modern classic, in my opinion. But it was fun to see Moana back on the big screen. Beautiful movie, and we enjoyed that as well. All that goes along. If you're joining us late, I talked about a Nick Cage movie called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent that we watched over the weekend at home and really enjoyed that one as well. What else is going on? Dominic says, I got Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, and I see threads that some people will be replacing Seven Wonders Duel with it. Do you have any newer versions of games that have replaced the original? It's a good question, Dominic. And that's an interesting category game because it's not really a new edition of the game. It's more of a spin-off or a sequel to it's not a retheme, it's not a reskin. It's kind of like Wormspan to Wingspan. Like Wormspan isn't any of those things. Wormspan is its own game that stands on its own, but it also builds off of core concepts from Wingspan. For me, Wormspan doesn't replace Wingspan. They both belong on my shelf. Even if I wasn't a publisher, I would have both those games on my shelf. But do I have any game? I'm looking over at my shelf here. Like Tokaido and Namiji. Again, I'm a little bit biased here because I'm now the publisher of Tokaido and Namiji and Tokaido Duo. I have all of them on my shelf, and I don't think one would replace the other. I like having all of them on my shelf. Are there any other games? I have both Star Wars deck building games, partially because they can merge with each other. I did for a while. I had the original Dice Throne on my shelf and Marvel Dice Throne. I think I had them both on my shelf at the same time. And now I just have Marvel Dice Throne. I didn't think I needed both Dice Thrones on my shelf. Any other games like that? There are probably other ones here. I have all my Clank stuff in one box. Actually, I did get rid of Clank Catacombs because I just like the board of Clank better, or having different boards that I can see and I can map out my path from the beginning of the game. So that's one where the Clank Catacombs, I think, has replaced Clank for some people, but it didn't do it for me. I preferred the original. So yeah, I can see it going both ways. I have the original Dune on my shelf, or Dune Imperium. I don't have the new Dune on my shelf because I'm happy with the original Dune, and some friends have Dune Imperium Uprising. Chad says, it sounds like Vantage might be able to be played virtually with people not at your table. Would this be possible? It is possible. If everyone has a copy of Vantage, then you can play Vantage. You need your own copy because you need a lot of the components of the game, including all the locations. You need them in front of you, and only you can see the location that you're at in Vantage. But it is possible to play. In fact, we have set up currently it's in the form of a Google Sheet, and it actually works pretty well because there's certain information that for the cooperative elements of the game that you need to actively be sharing with other players. We're kind of setting it up so it is easy for people to play virtually. You can just pop online and play with someone in the Stonemaier Games Discord. But everyone does need their own copy of the game. It's just the way it is based on how the game works. You need the cards, you need the dice, you need those things on your actual tabletop. Peter says that they're currently playtesting a game that asks players to have familiarity with a medium-sized 28 deck of cards. 28 deck of cards. Any advice for playtesting where game knowledge is an important factor? I'm not sure what a medium-sized deck of cards. Yeah, any advice for playtesting where game knowledge is an important factor? So, Peter, I don't exactly know what you're referring to. I'm not familiar with a deck of cards that has only 28 cards. But what I can say is, for example, say you were making a trick-taking game and you wanted to explain. Some people know what trick-taking is, but you want it to be accessible to people who don't know what trick-taking is. The way I would probably do that is have a section in the rulebook that just explains the concept of trick-taking in general, and then explain in the rulebook exactly how your game works. And I think that applies to playtesting too, especially blind playtesting where you need people to learn from the rulebook. So yeah, I think assume that some people will know and then block off a section for the people who don't know so that they can catch up to it. Yeah. Mark says they're currently playing Charterstone. That's awesome, Mark. Thanks for playing Charterstone. I'm glad you're excited about Vantage too. Charterstone is a campaign legacy game that I designed and was released in 2016 or 2017, I think. 2017. And Vantage, not a campaign game, but it is a game a little bit similar to Charterstone in that the knowledge that you learn from playing one game of Vantage, you can take that knowledge and apply it to future plays of Vantage. Let's see. Okay, Garrett says the Dune show is more of a slow burn. Hopefully it all comes together. Silo season 2 started great, but I've slowly been losing excitement about it. Oh, that's interesting. A coworker of mine, Garrett, mentioned that Silo started a little bit slow as well, but then it ramped up to show some key things that were referred to in the first season. So yeah, that's interesting. We'll see how it goes. I think Silo's through episode 5 right now. I do know we're loving the show Shrinking. We're on season 2 of Shrinking right now. The new episode just came out yesterday, and I think there's 2 more episodes. That's also on Apple TV like Silo is. And we're really enjoying Shrinking. Zachtal says, when prototyping games, do you rely on material that you have at home? In fact, I have a prototype that I've been cutting and assembling that's on my desk right now, a little bit off camera. So yes, I do. I rely on, I have to order some things sometimes like paper and ink, but yeah, I rely on the printers that are directly behind me and paper and a cutter. Here's what my Caterpillar looks like. Caterpillar, and then scissors and tape. Yeah. Zachtal says, do you think that the components you have at home might influence your design decisions? Not necessarily the things that I have at home, but there are certain components that do impact my design because they're just really hard to prototype. For example, I saw the other day a post about games with cards that have holes in them, which I think is a brilliant concept, to have cards that have holes in them that maybe you can see something through them, or the types of cards that are made on a clear plastic, where like in Mystic Veil, where you're printed on clear plastic and you sleeve them and you layer them. Dead Reckoning has them as well. I think those are brilliant uses of components. Even cards that have cards where the information is on both sides, where you have different information on the backside of the card. I think all that opens up some great design space, but it's also really tough to prototype. And so I have generally stayed away from those components in games because I think they're harder to prototype, harder to play test as a result. Let's see. David chimes in from PAX U. Yeah, so PAX Unplugged ended a few days ago. Thank you, David, for being there. He says he had a great time working with the MapleSource Stonemaier booth at PAX U, chatting with folks who own everything in Wingspan, and then others who have never played it was really interesting. Yeah, it's a great. We experienced this at conventions, seeing the people who have never even heard of Wingspan versus people who intimately know Wingspan. We see the best of both worlds there. And David, I know people like you are trying to be welcoming to all types of people who show up at those booths, and I really, really appreciate that. Also, I did want to mention, I mentioned on a livecast a few weeks ago that I was thinking about going on the BGG at Sea cruise that starts in Southampton, outside London, and then goes to Norway next summer. And I just wanted to say that we are definitely going on this cruise now. So I don't know if they have slots left, but if you are looking for something fun to do next summer that involves Norway and a lot of gaming on a boat, I'd love to play games with you on that boat. So yeah, if you're looking for that to do, we are now definitely going based on the plane tickets and things like that we've purchased for it. Julio says, have you had the chance to look into Letterboxd? I would love to see your ratings for movies and shows similar to BGG ratings. I did look into it. You mentioned it last week. I did look into it. I haven't signed up for it yet, but because I do, it's one of those things where I currently have a system for rating my games, but it's not a very, in fact, Julio, we could do this. If I don't end up joining Letterboxd, I'm happy to share the Google sheet that I use to track my my books and my movies and my TV shows. I rate all the things that I watch, and I put it on this big Google spreadsheet. But I also do share some of it. Here, I have the website up right now. If you are curious in general about things that I'm enjoying or things that even my coworkers are enjoying, if you go to our website, I'll share this right here. So on our website, if you go to About and go down to Stuff We Love, so on an ongoing basis, we update things that we love. So here's like my current list of things that we love, like things that I'm recently loving. And there's a big archive down here too. You can go back and see at past things that we love too. I don't know how often my coworkers update this, but you can kind of see that some of them do on an ongoing basis. Here's Erica. Here's Joe. these are their archived entries. And here are things that Erica, Dave, Susanna, Alan, Alex. So a lot of us have things that we've enjoyed fairly recently and posted on here on the Stuff We Love page. So this is not a stuff we love about Stonemaier Games. This is stuff we love outside of Stonemaier Games, even outside of the game industry. And I'm just pointing out that we do update this on a regular basis. Chad says, not to give you more work, it might be fun to get months photos of your game shelf. Monthly, are you trying to say monthly photos on my game shelf, like how the game shelf evolves over time? I try to post shelfies every now and then. I don't know if I do it every month, but maybe I should do a monthly reminder to do that. Yeah, I do have, I'm looking over at my shelf, but I really have 4 shelves. I have the Stonemaier shelf. I have my small and short game shelf. I have my main game shelf over here. And then I have my shelf of opportunity, which currently has mostly campaign games on it, and even a few games that I have played that I just can't fit onto my other shelves. Although maybe I can make room for it. Yeah, we'll see. I'm happy to always take photos of that and post it on Instagram. Sometimes I just need a little reminder to do it. Garrett says, am I going to check out Clank Legacy 2? That is one of the campaign games that's on my shelf, or shelf of opportunity right now. He says, oh, they just got their copy, but it was very badly damaged. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Garrett. Yeah, we do have our copy. So we currently have Clank Legacy 2, Tidal Blades 2, and Star Realms Legacy. And I think we'll probably start with Star Realms Legacy, just because I know for sure that's one that Megan and I are going to play just the 2 of us. I think it's likely that we will do Tidal Blades, just the 2 of us as well. And Clank Legacy, I don't know. We had a lot of fun playing with a couple the previous time that we played it. So maybe we'll try that again. Jeff says he's enjoying some nice Earl Grey tea while watching something I picked up from Captain Picard. Have you ever picked up an eating or drinking habit from a show or movie? Oh, I love this. I love this question in general. And it reminds me that I have some questions to ask all of you today. I love that question, Jeff. I'd love to hear if anyone has an answer to that. I probably have, but I can't remember offhand. But I love that question. Yeah, I love that question. That is a really, really great question. And if I think of an answer, I might do a blog post about that because I really do like that question. If anyone else has an answer to it, let me know. Also reminds me of the chocolate of the day. Last night, I made drinking chocolate, and I have some leftover. So that will probably be my chocolate of the day today, some drinking chocolate. But let me ask you some questions. I have a bunch of questions today. I'm going to throw them out. Maybe I'll repeat them. So I asked the Christmas question, the Christmas week question. Here's a question that's on my mind a little bit. That's come from a few different sources, including the announcement of the latest Magic the Gathering set, a podcast that I listened to about Soulforge Fusion. So I'm puzzling over this for a blog post. Here's the question. I'll just say it. Is it possible to offer speculation and secondary market viability without using FOMO tactics, fear of missing out? And so what I'm referring to is essentially collectible elements of games, but not featuring FOMO and fear of missing out. It's something I've been puzzling over a little bit. It is not something that I'm pursuing at Stonemaier Games, but it is kind of fascinating to me, this portion of collecting. And as anyone watching this, you might be a gamer, a tabletop gamer. All of us have that collector, or I think most of us have a collector in us. Even if it's not a random collector, we are collecting things on our shelves, and we're happy that those things are on our shelves. We don't use those things every day, but we're happy to have them on the shelf. So this idea of collecting, but tied to randomness, tied to speculation, something being rarer than other things. I guess that idea of rarity of something, certain elements being more rare than others, and how that can evolve into a secondary market. And part of the reason I've been thinking about it, and I should make a note about this, is that it has been fascinating for me to see how Wingspan, the existence of Wingspan, has spawned so many third-party market products and companies and sellers and creators in really cool ways that don't infringe on our intellectual property, but rather they enhance it. And I think that's really, really cool. And so I'm curious about that topic. And part of it came to mind because Magic the Gathering recently announced a new set. And as part of this set, they appear to have an artifact, a special card in the game that will be there will be different versions of this special artifact card. I don't think it'll have different abilities, but I think it'll have different elements of rarity and how that can be exciting for some people. But I don't like FOMO. I don't like using fear of missing out as a marketing tactic at all. And so I'm curious if there's any way that the two can go hand in hand without, or it cannot go hand in hand. One can exist without the other. That's one question. I will have to ask other questions in a second after I look at some of your answers. Here's another question. Is iconography as useful as I think it is? I always try to include it, but then I fall into a trap of either using too many or too few. I think iconography of using icons for key elements of a game is really, really helpful. If you can explain a bunch of words with one icon, that's easier to see from across the table, I think that's really helpful. I do not think it's helpful to completely replace text with icons. I think that limits you as a designer and can make things more complicated than intended. So I think oftentimes my favorite sweet spot is to have icons, but also have text that explains those icons. So you have a little bit of both. Melissa's on a Stonemaier streak right now, played both Tapestry and Sides for the first time last week. That's awesome, Melissa. Thank you so much for trying these these marquee games of Stonemaier Games for the first time. That's awesome. I hope you had fun with them. Miles says that Shrinking is his favorite show right now. That's awesome, Miles. Yeah, we're loving it. We're loving it. It has a lot of humor, but also a lot of depth in the characters and what they're going through. Julio says, have I read Wool, the book that Silo is based off of? I have read some books in the series. I can't remember which ones. It's been a long time, but I've read some books in that series. Let's see. Chad says, Nicole says, curious about the chocolate of the day. Maybe this came after, just in case that came after my drinking chocolate comment, Nicole, I basically used a combination of fancy hot cocoa powder with melted dark chocolate, melted milk chocolate, oat milk, and some Cool Whip. And I brewed it all up on the stove, and that became my drinking chocolate. Chad says, now that Vantage is past designing, are you now working on a newish game design? Yeah, I'm always working on something. Is it refreshing to think of anything else? Is it a different type of design so you can get a refresher? Yeah, just in general, I try to design different things, different challenges, different types of games. So yeah, I'm actively working on, as a designer, I'm working on 3 different games right now. Yeah, I think around 3 different games right now. Okay, Garrett has one of my questions of the day today, and I might throw out the other ones too to get you thinking, because I do have multiple questions today. Garrett says, offering the option to get random packs, but also an option just to buy the whole set at a reasonable price with a promise that they won't go out of print. That's a good way to do it. I like that way of doing it, and that relates to both types of people. Garrett says, this way people can seek out an individual card they might want and not get the whole set from the secondary market. Yeah, I like that. Zach Grease says that Brandon Sanderson just released collectible cards. He meant them all to be the same rarity, but they accidentally short printed certain cards, which are now very valuable. Interesting how the intention didn't align with the execution there. Julio says, I do like to complete games in this stuff, but I can exclude things like alternate art, different size boards, and some deluxe materials for my collections. I don't feel FOMO for things that don't change or add mechanisms to games. And Zaptal says, I feel like to ensure speculation, it has to be linked to some sort of scarcity. I would assume that it would automatically generate some kind of FOMO for people who want to have a complete collection. So I wonder if Garrett's idea addresses that to a certain extent, or if it also negates the idea of speculation or a secondary market. Trishul says, how about mixing rarity with play and pass items or modules, like Detective Chronicles of Crime Unlock comes to mind. Once you solve a rare case, you can pass it to others in the secondary market. I can see that. Chad mentions Battlestar Galactica, buying a game that you know is out of print. Yeah, here's the catch-22 that Garrett mentions. Rare and collectibles, they're for people who want to feel special in owning the item, but you kind of do a disservice if you don't emphasize the rarity to collectors. Yeah, you either kind of just, it's tough to manage both. Yeah, and Zach B says, I deeply respect game companies that refuse to make exclusives and loot crate random packs. And that's the tough thing here. Stonemaier Games is 100% against exclusives. We don't do exclusive content. So as Zach says, the goal is to sell a good game that everyone has access to buy. So yeah, even there, is there In fact, this came to mind the other day because a friend mentioned that they had a game that that was out of print, that had a bunch of Kickstarter exclusives in it, and he was kind of excited because he was able to sell the game for a lot of money. I don't want to do Kickstarter exclusives at all. But it was neat to see his excitement for it, for something that he could sell for more than he bought it for. Landon says, thank you for not using FOMO. I feel like I constantly discover a Kickstarter game years later and the developer is trying to shame me for not knowing about it sooner. Yeah, I don't like that either. And Mark says he is definitely a FOMO guy, so not a fan of. So Mark feels fear of missing out, and so he doesn't like those gotcha chance systems. And yeah, I should emphasize this isn't a strategy that we're pursuing, for one. Also, we are not interested at all in exclusive systems. But is it exclusive? I would say let's use card packs as an example. Magic the Gathering, card packs. You open a pack of cards, you get a rare card in that pack. Is that an exclusive? I don't know if I necessarily call that an exclusive. That card is Magic the Gathering isn't holding you back from getting that card, other than asking you to buy a bunch of packs to get that card if you want to try to find that card, or you go to the secondary market and you buy that card. But I don't think Magic the Gathering is actively. It's arguable, but I don't think they're actively excluding people from getting that card. Although at the same time, Magic the Gathering eventually stops reprinting sets, and so that does make things. It's kind of a timed exclusive there. Another question of the day. Let me throw another one at you. Have you ever attended a launch event for a new product, particularly one that was on crowdfunding, but in general, have you ever attended a launch event for a new product? I have a blog post, a guest post coming up soon, and I wanted to see if you've ever attended anything like that, if you had a good experience with it. That's a question. Oh man, I have a lot of questions for you today. I'm going to throw them out. And if you want to answer in the future or in the comments now, that's totally fine. I am going to soon do videos about games with high player counts, games that involve drafting, and kids versions of games. So if you have any favorite games in those categories, high player counts, so 6 or more players, that feature drafting, whether it's like pass a card drafting or pull from the center drafting, or the drafting like in Seven Wonders Duel that was mentioned earlier, or kids versions of games. And I don't mean kids games. I mean games where there is an adult version like Ticket to Ride, and there's Ticket to Ride First Journey or First Ticket, whatever it's called. Or My Little Scythe compared to Scythe, that sort of thing. Kids versions of existing games. Do you have a favorite one of those? The last question I have, I know a lot of questions here, is I have found that I have a few video topics that have piled up a little bit, where I look at them week to week and I'm like, I just don't know if I'm adding much value in talking about this topic, or maybe I'm just not that excited about the topic. For example, I have a potential top 10 list of games that have towers in them, but I don't know how interesting that really is for designers, like what the tower really adds to it. Or maybe I'm just not interested in towers as a designer all that much. As a gamer, I'm fine with them, but as a designer, not as much. And so if I do have a few topics like that have piled up, would you prefer that I put them all in one video and just have like 3 different topics, and I do a top 3 or a top 5 of those topics all in one video? Or would you prefer a shorter video that's just, top 3 or top 5 of that one single topic? So do you prefer combined or separate? Or do I just do them on one of these live casts sometime? I just do a quick top 3 and we talk about it here and that's it. Yeah, what would you prefer for those topics that I feel like I'm not interested in doing a full top 10 list, full Sunday sit-down video on? All right, here, I'm going to look back here at see some comments I missed about some of these questions. Thank you for entertaining all these questions today. Let's see, Zocto says, I think one way without FOMO would be for promos that have special treatment for events, like a promo card for expeditions that has an event treatment for attendees, but can also just be purchased. Maybe we release it at the event, and then later on we have it on our web store. Oh, here you go. Recent online without the treatment. So it's collectible and limited, but does not become inaccessible. Yeah, that makes sense. It could even be a card that has, well, actually, I'll say this. Do you think it could even be a card that has alternate artwork for the event, or it has a special card frame for the event, but you get mechanically the identical card? You can get that same card. It's either already in the game or you can buy it as a promo from our web store. Here's Sidereal Confluence is the best multiplayer game from Zach Gree. Here, I'll make a note of that. I do have some ongoing list about these topics. High player counts. Yeah, Sidereal Confluence. I haven't played that one in a while. And I don't think I've ever played the newer version of that one. Zach B says, maybe a helpful alternative for FOMO is Lego sells random minifigures in unmarked packages, but in each retail package, they include one of every character so dedicated fans can buy the whole case. So they have random packs, but in each retail package, they include one of every character. Okay, interesting. So you can either buy the whole thing and get everything. This goes back to what Garrett said, and that's a good system for it. I like that. Nick says, I like TCG's trending away from rare game pieces and towards special collectible versions. So I can play the game with an accessible standard version, but collectors have something cool to chase down. So you can get mechanically the same content, but you can also chase down alternate versions of that content. Yeah. I think part of in fact, I need to make notes about why I'm thinking about this topic. I think part of the reason it got me thinking about this a little bit is for the new Magic set, it intrigued me a little bit. So the new Magic set is about these racing teams that they are racing to win the prize, and the prize in this theme for this world for Magic the Gathering is a rare artifact. And every year this rare artifact is different, but no one knows what the artifact does. And it got me thinking a little bit of what if they had multiple versions of this artifact where it does different things for different people, depending on who wins it or how they use it. I don't think Magic's doing that. I think they'll have one ability for this card and they'll have different rarity versions of this card. But it just made me think, and this is the opposite of what many of you have said, that changing the mechanisms for it. But thematically, I kind of like that it does different things for different people. Yeah, that's part of what made me start to think about this. There he says, I would like to have the topics combined. If I had multiple topics that I don't feel justify a full video. Is it going to be about games or game design? Usually the videos that I post, while they are about my favorite elements of the games, I try to talk about them in terms of game design. So all of the videos that I try to put on the YouTube channel, I try to make them about game design ultimately. Scootman says you could do your top 3 on Livecast and then crop it out and post it as a standalone video. That's true. I could do the top 3 live and then just use that later as a standalone video for people who want to easily find it later. I like that. Garrett says someone needs to put together a top 10 videos video. Sure, yeah, I'd love to hear what people's favorite top 10 videos are. Jeff also says it would be a nice addition to Livecast to maybe once a month have a top 3 or topic and have viewers contribute too. Yeah, I like that actually. Yeah, have viewers contribute to that top 3. It's one of the reasons that I asked for your favorites too. Let's see. Blood. This is a very high player count game. Blood on the Clock Tower. No, it's I'm looking at different categories here. High player counts, separate category. Drafting, separate category. Kids versions of tabletop games. The card game Spoons. I think Spoons would count. Yeah. Trishul says, can you add, if I include the top 10 of these videos, can I add a topic tag or title to the description so it's searchable? Yeah, I definitely want to make them easy to find later for people who are searching for their favorite games with towers, if that ends up being one of them. Chad says he's looking forward to playing Catan Jr. with his son Owen when Owen gets a little bit older. Chad says, I know you didn't ask about this, but I also really love my very first games to get him started now before he's ready for the regular kids games. I found it's a really great gateway for him. Yeah, I'm looking for games like that for this particular list. Not that I have kids, but I do love playing these types of games with my nieces and nephews to maybe, especially if they're enjoyable for me as an adult still, and they're having a blast with them. And then maybe in the future, they can level up to the full Ticket to Ride or the full, what else did we play? We did one other one. Can't remember the other one, but we did another one. Here you go. Luke has a whole list. Everdell, yeah, Everdell, Catan, Castle Panic, Ticket to Ride. I actually don't think that Castle Panic is in my notes so far, so I will add that one. Thank you. Castle Panic. All good picks there. Yeah, thank you, Luke. Luke says, I'm looking forward to Adam and Wales' top 10 this year. No idea what it's going to be about. I think I watched Adam's video yesterday that I actually think was this video. So I don't know, Luke, if you haven't seen it yet, but Adam did yesterday release his top 10 of 2024. And it was great. And he shared some really cool games in there that I hadn't heard of even. Garrett says, Little Alchemist has been a hit. That's a good one for the list, Garrett. I don't think, yeah, that one's not on my list yet. So I'll add Little Alchemist. And isn't there a Quacks? A little Quacks version too? Yeah, I need to check that out. Nick says that he's been enjoying Micro Macro. His niece and nephew have been enjoying Micro Macro. I enjoy that too. And then Chad says, yeah, this is a little slightly different than the topic that I was going for, Chad, but I see what you're saying. He says, I also think Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition could be considered a gateway version of the full game. I agree with that. I wouldn't call it a kid's version, though, necessarily. But I do agree with that assessment. Quacks & Co. That's what it's called. Quacks & Co. Thank you, Garrett. I'll change my notes away from Little Quacks to Quacks & Co. I haven't played it, but it is one worth mentioning in this type of video, I believe. So yeah, those are my questions of the day. I appreciate your answers. We can keep talking about it in the comments of the permanent version of the video. So like, is it possible to have speculation, secondary market viability, even rarity, and the collector's aspect without having FOMO? Is it possible for those two things to somewhat coexist? That's one question. There's the question about when should I do a live cast the week of Christmas? Question about have you ever attended a launch event for a product? The idea of combining multiple topics into one video or doing little top threes on some of these live casts from time to time. Happy to do that. And then in general, if you have a favorite game with a high player count, so 6 or more players, favorite game with drafting, or favorite games that are kids versions of adult games, essentially. Yeah. Is there a Codenames? Is there a kids version of Codenames? I guess you could say Codenames Pictures is kind of that, but yeah, anything like that for Codenames or that style of game. Trishul says it would be good to explore platforms or tools with live where viewers can list their options and vote live. Dice Tower uses one called Board Game Brackets, or for their Board Game Brackets. Yeah, I wonder if StreamYard has that type of tool here. I don't know if they do. Let's see. Banners, brand. I don't know if they do, but doing a live poll where you can see the results in real time would be really cool to show on the live cast here through StreamYard. All right, Jerry, good luck for your final 24 hours, not 48 hours, but 24 hours for your crowdfunding campaign. Hope it goes well. I think those are all the questions that I asked today. Yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, thank you for those answers. Or anything that you think of in the future, I will definitely read all comments of this that are posted after the video, just as posted permanently on YouTube. Jeremy says, just came here to say happy holidays for you and your family. Thank you, Jeremy. I wish the same for you. Happy holidays. Stone Age Junior and Codenames Disney. I think those kind of count. Yeah, I'll make a note about those. Stone Age Junior. That wasn't on my list. Stone Age Junior. And what was the other one that you mentioned? Codenames Disney. Codenames Disney. And I guess Ian has a quick question or a quick answer to the question. He attended a launch for a Break the Ice type game in the late 80s. It was great. The people at the event got into playing the game, and we really did meet new people in Break the Ice. That's cool. And then the family variant of Isle of Cats. I think that that applies. And the family version of Agricola, I actually didn't. Oh, the family mode of Agricola. Yeah, I guess I'm not. I probably won't go into modes. I appreciate the mention. I might mention these modes of games. In fact, I shouldn't. You're right. You're totally right. I shouldn't. It's a little bit off topic, but it's very, very close. So I will at least mention it. Mention family modes of games like. Awesome. Yeah. Good mention there. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you all for joining in today. I really appreciate it. Whether you're watching live or in the future, I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will see you next Wednesday. Still next Wednesday. The one in the future, one after that is the Christmas week, which I might change up the time of. Awesome. All right. Have a good week. Take care. Bye.